What would you do if your 4-year-old daughter looked you in the eyes and said, "I died before, Mommy. I died in the fire"? The words hit me like a punch to the chest. She said it so casually, so matter-of-factly, like she was telling me what she had for lunch. But her eyes held something that no 4-year-old should ever know. The weight of death. The memory of pain. And I realized in that moment that everything I thought I knew about life, about death, about the impossibility of remembering what came before, was about to be shattered. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my daughter Emma changed everything I believed about existence itself. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. The kind of morning where the air smells like dying leaves and the first hint of winter. Emma was eating her cereal, her small legs swinging under the kitchen table, when she suddenly stopped mid-chew. She stared at the steam rising from my coffee cup. Her face went pale. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The smoke. It hurts to breathe." I looked around our kitchen. There was no smoke, just the gentle steam from my morning coffee. "What smoke, sweetheart?" She pointed at my cup with a shaking finger. "It looks like when I couldn't get out." "Get out of what?" I wanted to ask. But something in her expression stopped me. A haunted look that belonged on the face of someone who had lived through trauma, not a child who spent her days playing. With dolls and watching cartoons, I dismissed it. Kids have vivid imaginations, right? They say strange things all the time. But Emma wasn't like other kids. She had always been different, quieter, more observant. She would stare at candles until we blew them out, her little body tensing with each flicker of the flame. She refused to sleep without checking that all the doors were unlocked. Not locked. Unlocked. "Why do you need the doors unlocked, baby?" I had asked her once. "So I can get out if the fire comes back," she had answered, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. If the fire comes back. As if she was expecting it. The first real warning sign came 3 weeks later. We were at my sister's house for dinner. The adults were in the living room talking and laughing when we heard Emma screaming from the kitchen. Not crying. Screaming. The kind of scream that makes your blood freeze and your heart stop beating. We ran to find her collapsed on the floor, hyperventilating, tears streaming down her face. My sister had lit a candle on the counter, just a simple vanilla-scented candle for ambiance. Emma was staring at it like it was a monster. "Put it out!" She sobbed. "Put it out, please, I don't want to burn again." Again. That word echoed in my mind as I held my trembling daughter. My sister quickly blew out the candle, but Emma continued sobbing for 20 minutes. Through her tears, she kept repeating the same phrase over and over. "I don't want my hair to burn off again. It hurt so much when my hair burned off." I felt my husband David's hand tighten on my shoulder. We exchanged a look that said everything and nothing at once. Children don't usually imagine their hair burning off. That's specific, terrifyingly specific. That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, David and I sat in our kitchen in silence. The same kitchen where this had all started. "Kids have nightmares," he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "This isn't a nightmare, David. She's awake when she says these things." "Then what are you suggesting? That our 4-year-old daughter lived another life? That she died in a fire and somehow remembers it?" I didn't answer because I didn't know how to answer. The rational part of my mind rejected the idea completely, but the mother in me, the part that had carried Emma for 9 months and knew every expression that crossed her face, that part was terrified. Because Emma didn't talk about fire the way children talk about monsters under the bed. She talked about it like someone who had lived through it. The nightmares started a few days later. Emma would wake up screaming at exactly 2:47 a.m. every single night. 2:47 a.m. I would run to her room to find her sitting up in bed, her pajamas soaked with sweat, her eyes wide with terror. "The door was locked, Mommy," she would whisper. I tried and tried, but the door was locked, and the smoke was getting thicker, and I couldn't breathe, and my dress caught fire, and she would trail off, staring at something I couldn't see. What dress, Emma? My blue dress, with the white flowers, the one Grandma Rose made for me. Grandma Rose. Emma had never had a Grandma Rose. Both of her grandmothers were named Patricia and Louise. We had never mentioned anyone named Rose to her, but she talked about Grandma Rose like she had known her intimately. Grandma Rose taught me to make bread, Emma told me one morning over breakfast. She had flour on her hands and she smelled like cinnamon and soap. She said I was her special girl. She said it with such love, such specific detail. The flour on her hands, the smell of cinnamon and soap. These weren't the vague imaginings of a child. These were memories. But memories of what? Of whom? I started writing everything down. Every strange thing Emma said, every detail she mentioned, every time she reacted to fire or smoke or locked doors. The notebook filled up quickly. October 15th. Emma asked why we don't have a rocking chair by the window. Grandma Rose always sat in her rocking chair by the window, watching for Papa to come home from the factory. October 18th. Emma refused to wear her blue dress to church. Blue dresses burn too fast, she said. October 22nd. Emma asked me why houses don't have more windows. If there were more windows, people could jump out when the fire comes. October 25th. Emma drew a picture of a house. It was detailed beyond her years. She drew smoke coming from the windows and a small figure pressed against an upstairs window. "That's me," she said, pointing to the figure. I was trapped. October 30th. Emma asked me what a factory whistle sounds like. I told her I didn't know. "It's really loud," she said. "It hurt my ears when it blew at 6 o'clock. That's when Papa came home. But not the day I died. The whistle kept blowing and blowing. But Papa never came home." I stared at that last entry for a long time. The day I died. My 4-year-old daughter was talking about the day she died, like it was a Tuesday grocery trip. David thought I was losing my mind. "You're encouraging this," he said one night after Emma had gone to bed. "You're writing down every crazy thing she says like it's real. What if it is real? Sarah, listen to yourself. You're talking about reincarnation, about past lives. This is Emma. Our Emma. She's 4 years old, and she has an active imagination. Explain the details then. Explain how she knows what burning hair smells like. Explain how she knows that blue fabric burns faster than other colors. Explain Grandma Rose." He couldn't explain any of it. None of us could. But Emma kept talking. She told me about the house where she lived before. A 2-story white house with green shutters and a wraparound porch. She described the kitchen in minute detail. The cast iron, stove, the yellow curtains with tiny red cherries, the wooden table that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. She told me about her brother Tommy, who was 6 years older and had a gap between his front teeth. She told me about her cat, Whiskers, who was orange and white and always sat on the porch railing in the afternoons. She told me about the day everything changed. "It was really hot," she said one afternoon while we were coloring together. "July hot. The air was thick and hard to breathe. Mama had opened all the windows, but there was no wind. Mama. Not Mommy. Mama. I was taking a nap upstairs because it was too hot to play outside. Tommy was at his friend's house. Papa was at the factory. Mama was downstairs making preserves because the peaches were going bad. The detail was staggering. The specificity was impossible. I woke up because I smelled smoke. But it wasn't like wood smoke from the fireplace. It was wrong. It smelled like burning things that shouldn't burn. I stopped coloring. The smoke was coming under my door. I tried to open it, but it was so hot it burned my hand. I could hear Mama screaming downstairs, but then the screaming stopped. Emma's voice remained calm, matter of fact, like she was recounting a story she had heard rather than lived. I went to the window, but it was too high to jump. The fire was getting louder. It sounds like a monster when it gets big, like a monster eating everything. What happened next, Emma? My dress caught fire first, the blue one with white flowers that Grandma Rose made. It happened so fast. Then my hair. That hurt the most. And then... She looked up at me with those impossibly old eyes, and then I went to sleep. But I could still see everything. I watched my house burn down. I watched Papa come running from the factory when he saw the smoke. I watched him fall on his knees in the street and cry. The crayon slipped from my fingers. I watched them put me and Mama in boxes and bury us in the cemetery behind the church. Papa put flowers on our graves every Sunday until he died too. Emma, honey, how do you know all this? She shrugged. I just remember. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I started researching. I spent hours online, searching for house fires, for factory towns, for families named Rose and Tommy. I looked through historical records, newspaper archives, anything I could find. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. Some proof that Emma's memories were just fantasy. Some evidence that she had heard these stories somewhere and was repeating them. What I found instead made my blood run cold. 3 days into my research, I found a newspaper article from the Millbrook Daily Herald, dated July 23, 1952. The headline read, "Mother and daughter perish in Mill Street fire." My hands were shaking as I read. Rose Hutchinson, 32, and her daughter Catherine, 4, died yesterday in a house fire that consumed their home at 247 Mill Street. The fire, which started in the kitchen while Mrs. Hutchinson was canning peaches, spread rapidly through the 2-story structure. Rose Hutchinson. Catherine, age 4. Grandma Rose. Mrs. Hutchinson's son Thomas, 10, was at a neighbor's house at the time of the fire and escaped harm. Her husband, Robert Hutchinson, who works at the Millbrook Textile Factory, was at work when the fire broke out. Tommy Papa at the factory. Neighbors reported hearing the factory whistle blow repeatedly as workers saw the smoke and tried to alert the community. The factory whistle. Catherine Hutchinson was found in an upstairs bedroom, apparently overcome by smoke after being unable to escape through the door, which investigators believe became too hot to touch. I was hyperventilating. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be possible. But there it was, in black and white. A 72-year-old newspaper article describing exactly what my 4-year-old daughter had been telling me for months. I kept reading, my vision blurring with tears. The family cat, described by neighbors as orange and white, also perished in the blaze. Whiskers. Mrs. Hutchinson was found in the kitchen, where she had apparently been making preserves when the fire started. Mama making preserves because the peaches were going bad. The house, described as a 2-story white structure with green shutters and a wraparound porch, was a total loss. I closed the laptop and ran to the bathroom, where I threw up until there was nothing left. When David came home from work that evening, I showed him the article. He read it 3 times in complete silence. "This is..." He started, then stopped. "Impossible," I finished. "I know. There has to be an explanation. Maybe Emma heard this story somewhere. Maybe... Where, David? Where would a 4-year-old hear about a house fire from 1952? He didn't have an answer. Neither did I. But Emma did. When I showed her the photograph that accompanied the article, a grainy black and white image of the burned house, she nodded matter-of-factly. "That's my house," she said. "See how the upstairs window is all black? That's where I was." She pointed to another part of the photo. "And see that big tree in the yard? I used to climb it with Tommy. There was a swing on that branch right there. The tree was barely visible in the photograph, just a charred outline against the sky. But Emma pointed to a specific branch with absolute certainty. "Can you tell me more about Tommy?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma smiled, the first genuinely happy expression I had seen when she talked about her memories. "Tommy was the best big brother. He taught me to whistle and how to skip stones in the creek behind our house. He had a gap right here." She pointed to her front teeth. "And he could spit really far through it." She paused, her expression growing sad. "He cried when I died. I tried to tell him I was okay, but he couldn't hear me." "Where is Tommy now, Emma?" "I don't know. I came here to be with you and Daddy instead." The simple way she said it, like choosing to be born was as easy as choosing what to wear in the morning, made my chest tighten. That night, I called the Millbrook Historical Society. An elderly woman named Margaret answered the phone. "I'm researching the Hutchinson family," I told her. "They lived on Mill Street in the 1950s. "Oh my," Margaret said. "The Fire family." "Yes, I remember that tragedy. I was just a teenager when it happened, but the whole town talked about it for years. Do you know what happened to the son? Thomas? Tommy?" "Oh, he went to live with his aunt in Springfield after his father passed. Robert Hutchinson never recovered from losing his wife and little girl. He died about 5 years later. Some said it was a broken heart. Papa put flowers on our graves every Sunday until he died too. Tommy grew up and moved away. I think he became a teacher. Last I heard, he was still alive. Must be in his 80s now if he's still with us." My heart stopped. He's still alive? Far as I know. Why do you ask, dear?" I couldn't tell her the truth. How could I explain that my 4-year-old daughter claimed to be his sister who had died 70 years ago? "Just family genealogy research," I lied. But Margaret wasn't finished. "You know, the strangest thing about that fire," she continued, "was what some people claimed to see afterwards." "What do you mean?" "Well, you have to understand. People were different back then. More superstitious, maybe. But several neighbors swore they saw little Catherine in the weeks after the fire. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Saw her? Standing. In the yard where her house used to be. Always wearing that blue dress her grandmother had made for her. The one she died in. They said she looked like she was waiting for someone. The blue dress with white flowers. Of course, it was probably just grief playing tricks on people's minds," Margaret said quickly. "But Tommy, poor Tommy insisted he could see her too. Said she would come to his room at night and talk to him. His aunt was so worried about him that she took him to see a doctor. I was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles were white. The doctor said it was normal for children to have imaginary friends after trauma. Said Tommy would outgrow it. Did he? Well, yes and no. He stopped talking about seeing Catherine, but... Margaret paused. But what? He used to leave toys outside, where the house had been. Little dolls and toy cars. Said Catherine was lonely and needed something to play with. He did that for years, even as a teenager. People thought it was sweet, if a bit odd. After I hung up the phone, I sat in my living room staring at Emma, who was playing quietly with her dolls on the carpet. She looked up at me and smiled. "Mommy, why are you crying?" How could I explain that everything I thought I knew about death, about life, about the very nature of existence, had just been turned upside down? How could I tell her that I had found proof of a life she claimed to remember? A life that ended 70 years before she was born. Instead, I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. "I just love you so much, baby." "I love you too, Mommy. But don't be sad. Dying isn't scary. It's like going to sleep and then waking up somewhere new." She said it with such simple wisdom, such acceptance. "Emma, do you miss your other family? Tommy and Papa and... Mama?" She considered this seriously. Sometimes. But I'm happy here with you and Daddy. I chose you. What do you mean you chose us? Before I came here, I could see lots of different families. But you and Daddy looked the safest. And you have the prettiest garden. I always wanted to help grow flowers. That night, David and I talked until dawn. What do we do with this information? He asked. What do we do with the knowledge that our daughter was someone else? I don't know. And I truly didn't know. Do you take your 4-year-old to therapists who will think you're both insane? Do you try to contact Tommy Hutchinson, a man in his 80s who probably spent decades trying to forget the trauma of losing his little sister? Do you encourage Emma to remember more, or do you hope she forgets? The decision was made for us. 3 days after I found the newspaper article, Emma's memories began to fade. It started gradually. She stopped mentioning Grandma Rose. She stopped reacting to candles and smoke. She slept through the night without nightmares. Emma, I asked her one morning over breakfast, do you remember telling me about living in another house? She looked at me with genuine confusion. What other house, Mommy? The white house with green shutters, where you lived with Tommy and Grandma Rose. She shook her head, her expression blank. I don't know any Tommy. Is he a friend from school? Just like that. The memories were gone. Or at least they seemed to be gone. But sometimes, if I watch carefully, I catch glimpses of Catherine in my Emma, the way she insists on checking that all the doors are unlocked before bed, the way she flinches when the smoke alarm beeps during cooking, the way she talks to flowers in our garden like they're old friends, and sometimes late at night when she thinks I'm not listening, I hear her whispering to someone who isn't there. It's okay, Tommy. I'm safe now. I found a new family, and they take good care of me. Last month, I made a decision that I'm still not sure was right. I drove to Millbrook, to the cemetery behind the old church. It took me 2 hours to find the grave. But there it was. Catherine Rose Hutchinson, beloved daughter and sister, July 15th, 1948, July 22nd, 1952. Our little angel. Next to her was her mother, Rose Margaret Hutchinson, devoted wife and mother, March 3rd, 1920, July 22nd, 1952. Together again. I knelt beside Catherine's grave and whispered, She's okay. Emma is okay. She's safe and loved, and she chose us to take care of her. I felt foolish talking to a headstone, but I also felt like I needed to say it. As I stood to leave, I noticed something that made my heart stop. There were fresh flowers on Catherine's grave, not old, weathered flowers that had been there for weeks. Fresh daisies, picked that morning. I looked around the empty cemetery, but I was alone. An elderly man approached from behind me. The groundskeeper, I assumed. Beautiful flowers, I said, pointing to Catherine's grave. He smiled. Mr. Hutchinson brings them every Sunday. Has for decades. He's 83 years old and still makes the drive from Springfield every week. Tommy still visited his little sister's grave. After 70 years, he still brought her flowers. He's a nice old gentleman, the groundskeeper continued. Always talks to her like she's right there listening. Last week I heard him telling her about his grandchildren. I wanted to approach Tommy Hutchinson. I wanted to tell him that his sister was okay, that she had found a new life, a new family. But how do you walk up to an 83-year-old man and tell him that his sister, who died when he was 10 years old, is living as your 4-year-old daughter? How do you offer that kind of impossible comfort? I didn't. Instead, I drove home to Emma, who was in our backyard picking dandelions and making wishes. What are you wishing for, baby? I wish that all the sad people would be happy, she said, blowing the seeds into the wind. Sometimes I wonder if she knows. If somewhere deep inside, she remembers Tommy and wishes he could know that she's okay, It's been 6 months since Emma's memories faded. She's a normal 4-year-old now, or as normal as any child can be. She laughs and plays and has tantrums about bedtime. She's excited about starting kindergarten next year. But I'm not the same person. I was before this happened. How can you be? How can you return to your ordinary life after glimpsing something that suggests death isn't the end? That consciousness, memory, love itself might survive in ways we can't understand? I still have the notebook where I wrote down everything Emma told me. Sometimes I read through it and wonder if I imagined the whole thing. But then I look at the newspaper article I printed out, the one about Rose and Catherine Hutchinson, and I know it was real. All of it was real. I think about Tommy Hutchinson, still visiting his sister's grave every Sunday at 83 years old. I think about the love that survives death, the bonds that transcend time. I think about Emma, my Emma, who chose us to be her family in this life. And I wonder what happens next. Will she remember again someday? Will other memories surface from other lives? Or will she live this life fully, as Emma, carrying only the faintest echoes of who she used to be? I don't have answers to these questions. I'm not sure anyone does. But I know this. Love doesn't die. Consciousness doesn't simply end. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get the chance to care for souls who have traveled further than we can. Imagine to find their way home. Emma is sleeping peacefully in her room as I write this. Tomorrow she'll wake up as my daughter, my Emma, with no memory of white houses or blue dresses or brothers named Tommy. But tonight, I whisper a promise to the little girl she once was. You are safe. You are loved. And Tommy still remembers you. Because some bonds transcend death. Some love survives everything. And some stories don't end, even when we think they do. So I ask you this. When a child tells you something impossible, something that makes you question everything you thought you knew about life and death and the nature of existence itself, do you believe this is just imagination? The product of an active mind making sense of the world? Or is there such a thing as memories that survive death, love that transcends time, and souls that choose to come back to us when we need them most? I used to think I knew the answer. Now I'm not sure there is one. But I know that Emma is here, and she is loved. And maybe that's the only truth that really matters. The rest is just mystery. And maybe mystery is enough.